So if you want to hear any lore, and I mean any lore whatsoever, consider checking out the Patreon, because even at the $1 tier, your voice is heard, and you get to help choose what is this week's lore. And this week, by way of Patreon, I bring you the lore on Dr. Zimmer from Fallout 3. The director of the Institute's Synth Retention Bureau. In 2277, he could be found in Rivet City, where he is having a brief stay. Now, the Synth Retention Bureau is an entire branch of the Institute that is sole purpose, its only job is to track and find and capture synths that have escaped from the Institute. His special are a strength of 3, perception of 6, endurance of 3, charisma of 4, intelligence of 8, agility of 6, and a luck of 5. And he's also 56 years old, which I have a question mark written down here that there's no way he's actually 56 years old. The man looks like he's about 80. Could have just been a mix-up. It's his age is from the official Fallout 3 guidebook, so I doubt that he's actually that age, and it was just a writer. He might have meant to even switch the 56 with the 65 or something, or what have you. Now, on January, February, March, April, May, June, July 10th of 2277, Syverson C, or C. Syverson, a terminal entry from the Institute, a scientist at the Institute, says, latest round of testing complete. Results are all in expected parameters. Informed Dr. Zimmer directly, as he had ordered the test personally. He seemed annoyed with the results, unsure what he was looking for. He declined to specify why he wanted the test to begin with, which I feel like is a very decent way to be introduced to who this character is, even though this is the game that comes out after Fallout 3, the game we meet him in, because he's a man who wants things. And I don't think he's a man who thinks about the things he wants. He's either told he wants them or just wants them. And I think that's an overall theme with most of the Fallout games, if not all of them, is the themes of wanting, the themes of greed. And I feel almost like a broken record with how much I talk about it, but it is something that is so inherent to evil characters in the series. They want things. And, yes, we all want things, but why do you want things? For nefarious reasons or reasons that are going to benefit mankind and human forward? Do you want clean water because you want clean water, or do you want aqua pura because it's going to make you $1? Sometime after this log was made in the Institute, Zimmer left for DC, for the Capital Wasteland, in search of an android, what they were called before we had the term synths from Fallout 4 and Fallout 3. They're referred to as androids. He is accompanied by a 3rd-gen synth, Armitage. Zimmer hoped Madison Lee could help them find the escaped synth A3-21. If you speak to Zimmer about A3-21, who we later find out is actually Harkness, the head of the security detail in Rivet City, Lone Wanderer can say, okay, so if others have escaped, why are you going after this one? And Dr. Zimmer can say, this particular android, designation A3-21, is different, special, the most advanced synthetic humanoid I've ever developed. The others, like my escort, Armitage here, all are of older models, easily replicated. But A3-21, it would take years to replicate him. So you see, this android must be located at all costs. The others are acceptable losses, but A3-21, he's irreplaceable. And I think this plays a fun role into the idea of what is love for these characters. Like, what is love for humanity? What is love for other people? This is a person who sees a human, more or less, he's a Gen 3 synth, and a Gen 3 synth is essentially just a 3D printed human with a chip in his brain that makes him a synth. This is someone that he sees as a tool. He sees it as a robot. He sees it as something that he can use for his own personal gain. This is not a man who loves humanity. And even if he does love humanity, he sees himself higher than others, because if it wasn't that he is a robot or an android or a synth, he is a better human of society, Zimmer is, than someone who, say, doesn't have the intelligence, doesn't have the aptitude that he does. He sees everybody as a commodity. Armitage is a Gen 3 synth. He can eat and digest food much like a human. Zimmer says A3-21 is further along. Is he a Gen 3.5 synth? Is he a prototype 4 synth? Gen 4 synth? Is Nate a Gen 4 synth? Now, if you've been here a minute, you know how I feel about Fallout 4. As time goes on, I like it more and more. In my view of the game, it's heavily implied that Nate was the first Gen 4 synth, a synth that you could not tell is synthetic. You could not tell that it is a 3D printed human. And I think that's kind of a retcon that will come about from Harkness. Now, is this because they didn't have the next game written 10 years in advance? Yeah, probably. I'm not dumb. I understand that. 8 years in advance? Yeah. Gen 3 synths are the most advanced that we can see. Magnolia, Mayor McDonough, Gen 3 synths that we see them interact, behave like humans. Gen 4 synths have the ability to be even more than that, where they can enjoy other things, because all Armitage needs to eat is just basic food and basic water. He doesn't even really have to indulge. He just needs the basics. Now, like I said, Dr. Zimmer's entire thing is if he got to Rivet City, he could find his synth because of the help of Dr. Lee. That was his plan. But once Zimmer got to Rivet City, Dr. Lee wanted nothing to do with him. The Lone Wanderer can ask, "What do you know about Zimmer?" to Dr. Lee, and she'll say, "That man doesn't have you looking for his pet android, does he? I've already told him to lay off it. He's distracting my entire team." A conversation can be heard between Anna Holt, a botanist for Dr. Lee's team, and Dr. Zimmer. It goes a little something to the tune of, "Look, Dr. Zimmer, we've been over this." This is Anna Holt. "We've been over this. We don't know about your runaway robot, and we don't care. This lab is dedicated to solving real problems." Dr. Zimmer will say, yes, but Dr. Lee," Anna Holt will say, "Dr. Lee's trying to save lives, and your constant interruptions are interfering with those efforts. Now, please stand aside." Dr. Zimmer say, "I'm sure the good doctor's work with water purification is fascinating, but if you knew what was at stake, the technology and the android." Anna will cut him off and say, "What is at stake? You won't tell me what is at stake. Vagaries and secrecy. A robot is a robot, Zimmer, no matter how shiny the paint job. Now, please." "Ignorance and facetiousness," Zimmer will reply with. "That's all you people are good for. Shiny paint job indeed. You can't even imagine the Commonwealth's accomplishments." Anna Holt will then say back, "You know, if you're so smart, maybe you could help us. But no, that never crossed your mind. Go peddle your selfishness somewhere else." "Fine. But I'm not leaving, not until I've spoken to Dr. Lee. I'll be here when she's ready to abandon her chemistry set. Talk real science," says Zimmer. And Anna Holt will just reply with, "Suit yourself." Pursuits that the Institute would absolutely love to help with. Dr. Lee is in the Institute in Fallout 4. So if Zimmer would have been like, "Okay, I'm going to help you a little bit, or if you help me, I can guarantee I can have my men help you," she winds up going in the pursuit of in the pursuit of a scientific field, to the point where she goes to be with some of the brightest minds on the planet. The Dr. Zimmer can also grab the Lone Wanderer and try to get the Lone Wanderer to help him out with his findings of A3-21 or Harkness for the Replicated Man quest. And he'll say, "You there? What are you, some kind of lab assistant? No, you look a bit more weathered. Are you by chance for hire?" The Lone Wanderer said, "That depends. What exactly are we talking about here?" And Zimmer would say, "To the point." I like that. This is a paraphrase. I'm taking a couple different snippets from what he says from this dialogue and taking the most important stuff. He goes, "To the point." I like that. "Well, as it turns out, I've misplaced some of my sensitive property. All you know of robots are those bucket of bolts, these Mr. Handshakes or what have you. You see, in the Commonwealth, we've made artificial persons, synthetic humanoids, regarded to think and feel and do whatever we need. And occasionally, they get confused and they wander off." The Lone Wanderer can ask, "Interesting, but what does this exactly have to do with me?" And Zimmer will say, "You're helping me retrieve the android, aren't you? He's out there, somewhere, in the Capital Wasteland. He must have done something drastic, like a facial surgery and maybe even a mind wipe, or else I would have found him by now. It'll be no easy task. He may not even realize he's an android. Don't upset him by talking with him. Just come and get me immediately, and I will handle it." And this starts that quest. Now, by 2287, we actually get to go into the Institute and see what's going on there. When you go to the Synth Retention Bureau, Zimmer is nowhere to be found, and he's not in the Commonwealth. He's reported missing. Justin Io is filling in for him in the Synth Retention Bureau, and if you ask him about it, he'll say he's supervising the retrieval of some of the more high-profile units in reference to Zimmer. In his absence, Justin Io, keep things running smoothly. There was actually a voice profile for him to be in Fallout 4, but he does not appear. There is something about a man who, he's very much a Burke, I feel like, Dr. Zimmer. He's very much a Mr. Burke, where he is a character who is doing things to justify the ends to his own means. He doesn't necessarily believe in the Institute, but he knows the Institute is safe, will keep him fed, he will have some place to be, and will pay him. And he gets to leave the Institute, which is something that people inside of the Institute don't necessarily get to do all of the time. And that is somewhat of a luxury. And I'm sure that he probably waves that in people's faces, especially a man of his age out there exploring. Is a dangerous man with resources. He's a piece of garbage. And I can see him flaunting that he's a piece of garbage to other people, and they can't really say much because they feel like they're trapped. I hope you've enjoyed that. That was a fun character for me to talk about, but that is everything I have for this week's Lore. Hey everybody, wasn't that great? Didn't you enjoy that? A little bit of Fallout lore to start your day? Maybe midday Fallout lore? Hell, right before bedtime? Doesn't get any better than this. If you like this, check out the Patreon. There's a link in the description below. If you want to have your voice heard, if you want me to do a certain piece of lore, the best way to get in contact with me is through the Patreon. The people who are on screen right now, I gotta thank them. Thank you to these fine folks right now. Because of them, the show can continue to grow and get bigger and better. And if you want to check it out, from the $1 tier to the $10 tier, your voice is heard every single week. I filmed the full Atomic Radio Hour podcast episodes live in our Discord. Hey, you know what? While you're here, check out the Discord. There should be a link in the description below. Check out my Twitter. Check out the show's Twitter. Come hang out. It's a good time. My name has been Vince. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you to the Patreon. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.